Well, thank you everyone for attending again. My name is Jim Perkins, and I'm from Corum Group. I'm Executive Vice President there. I lead deals in M&A representing selling companies, particularly gaming companies that have sold to multiple Chinese companies. We have this panel here with Bill and Jim, and we're looking for Yuli right now. As soon as she comes, she can hop up on stage and we can go from there. But in the meantime, why don't I have you guys introduce yourself. Jim?
Sure. Jim Ying with CB Capital. We're a Shanghai-based investment bank that primarily brokers late-stage investment and M&A deals coming out of China. So a couple of recent deals that we've done, AppLovin for $1.4 billion, Media.net, $890 million, Smaato, which was $148, and Spigot with $252 million. My background is actually in the gaming space. Previous to working with CB Capital, I led publishing investments teams with Six Waves, Gree, and Tango.
Hi, good morning. I'm Bill Wang from Profile World. Profile World is a transmedia company with gaming, film, TV, animation, online literature, education, and also online media. For the gaming business, we are a global developer publisher of games on all the platforms from PC, console, mobile to VR. And only one few companies have done IPO twice. We went IPO on NASDAQ back to July 2007. And 8 years later, we delisted from NASDAQ. And early this year, we went IPO in China with around $8 billion market cap.
Thank you, and I think Yuli's joined us. Welcome, Yuli. Could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, let me give a brief introduction to me and our company. I'm Yuli Zhao from Youzu Interactive. Youzu actually is one of the top-tier game developer and also publisher from China. And start from 2009, we have 7 years experience in both PC game development and also mobile game development now. So right now, we are very lucky because we are one of the first-tier game company to be listed in China Asia market, which is known by the best capital markets given to the game business now. And we are also very active seeking to enter more in global business now. So right now, about 40% of our revenue is coming from overseas market, especially from US and European. And we just acquired one of the largest game company, BigPoint, in European. So going forward, BigPoint is also going to help us to publish and also develop games in Western markets.
Wow, congratulations on that acquisition. So we have a number of questions here, and it's interesting. I just had a session before this on M&A in Asia, and had some really good questions, which I couldn't answer them all because I think you guys are the experts on this. But one of the most compelling questions is, how long do you expect Chinese buyers to keep outbidding Western companies for gaming companies? In my estimation, on the last 3 deals that we've done, clearly the Chinese buyers were more aggressive in acquiring Western companies like Digital Extremes and Jagex. So how long do you expect this to last, and do you think that is going to change in the future? Do you want to start, Bill?
Okay, sure, I can start first. Well, gaming is mainstream entertainment in Asia, especially in China. So Chinese investors like gaming companies, and that's why game companies have very high PE ratio compared to the West. Back when we were a public company at NASDAQ, our PE ratio around 10. Now, after we returned to Chinese equity market, our PE ratio has gone up from 10 to about 50. So the big arbitrage opportunity there. As long as this window stay there, I think Chinese company will continue buying Western companies.
Yeah. And that multiple is amazing. So why is that multiple so high in China compared to the West?
Sure. That's because Chinese market, equity market is kind of isolated market. As a foreigner, you cannot trade equity in China. And for local investors, there are limited ways to invest your money. Either you buy real estate properties or you buy stocks. And for Profile World, as a very high quality product and well established in Chinese market, so that reason we got pretty good valuation from investors.
That's great. Okay. So that's, and you expect that to continue? Or do you expect it to?
It depends. It really depends. As you know, Chinese government is really worried about the shrinking foreign reserve.
Yeah.
As in the past years, that's a really big multi-billion-dollar acquisition in the West by Chinese companies. So now, the Chinese government really worried about outflow of the US dollars. So they have imposed limitations on overseas M&A. I think beginning from this year, for public companies out of gaming industries, they are not allowed to buy gaming companies or VR companies anymore. So that's one way they try to reduce overseas M&A by local companies. They also have restrictions in terms of how much money you can pay. If you want to pay over, for example, $300 million US, you need to go through very strict government approval process. There's like a Ministry of Commerce involved. There's also a Commission of Economic Growth will get involved. So the approval process could be very lengthy.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. Jim, do you have a perspective?
Yes, I think to answer this question, I think Bill's covered one of the main points, but really to understand or think about how long this is going to continue, you do want to look into the underlying drivers of what's driving a lot of these transactions. So the financial arbitrage opportunity certainly is a big one, but another element is the strategic value of overseas footprints, right? So for many of these gaming companies in China, they've already done a great job of catering to the audience base there, generating their values, their revenue and profitability over in China. For them, the China market is as competitive, if not more competitive than Western markets, right? If you look at the sheer quantity of developers out there churning out high production value games relative to many Western markets, and then you look at some of the variations within the top grossing charts, certainly on the mobile side, there's a lot more movement in China because there's constant games coming out. And user tastes are a lot more fickle, and then they burn through the content much more quickly. Whereas if you look in Western markets, it's generally going to be the same games that are up there. Every so often you get a new game jumping in. And so for many of these companies, they're seeing, if anything, the markets outside of China as being a bigger opportunity than within China itself. Right? So you combine that with the fact that there's this financial arbitrage opportunity, and I think that's part of the reason why you're seeing so many of these companies looking overseas for M&A targets.
Yeah, very interesting. Yuli, do you have perspective?
Right. Let me just give an example of companies, of our company. As I just mentioned, we acquired BigPoint early this year. Actually, I do agree that the bill mentioned as a financial arbitrage is the most important driver after all of these M&As in China acquiring overseas company. However, would you believe the strategic synergies between those two companies is a bigger driver under the strategic thinking? Because for our company, we are thinking currently 40% of our revenue is from overseas market already. And we are trying to bring more of our product and also more of the product from China to overseas market. Right now, Chinese market is also the largest game market, become the largest game market globally. So there are also more overseas companies. They are trying to enter China market, but they cannot find the right way because the government issue is too high barrier for them. Yeah. And also the local market, not to mention over 100 channels in China market. So many companies also find our company. They ask us, how do we enter China market? So this is actually a best way that the both company can form a capital level strategic cooperation. So rather than the financial arbitrage, I think in the long term wise, I think strategic synergy will be the most important driver.
That leads, that's a very good point, Yuli. So that leads to my next question is, are there specific types of games that translate better into the Chinese market? I mean, the magic is to bring Western games into the Chinese market and bring Chinese games into the Western market. Many have tried, most have failed. It's very, very difficult to do that. And that sounds like part of your strategy especially with the acquisition of Big Point. So are there games that translate well, and how much time does it take to get games ready for your market?
So for example, we have the launcher game called League of Angels, which is actually making over $20 million per month in overseas markets, mainly from US and West Europe. So we see that it is not easy to bring Chinese game to overseas market directly. However, when we see the team, they try to, the whole publishing team, they try to hire actually local people from global markets. And they try to make the game more westernized, actually. It's not only like bring the Chinese game to overseas market, it's localize this game and also have the local people to operate the game for the market, which is very important for the success of the game. And also, from the other way, we are also trying to bring overseas games to China market, and this is also, we need to find the right genre of game which is suitable for China market. Because based on our experience, for example, we bring the game, some casual games like Minion Rush, like Frozen Free Fall to China markets. Actually, that become very success in China market. Like Minion Rush make over 160 million download in China market, which is actually really good among even among the local peers. It's really good performance. So the most important thing is that you need to understand the users in different market and make your game suitable for them.
Okay. Good. Bill?
China is a very saturated market, so it's very hard to crack this market. We have some experience, we are the publisher of Dota 2 in China, and also we are going to publish CSGO in China by the end of this year. So mobile games like League of Legends and Dota 2 have been doing very well in China. For League of Legends, I heard they have over 5 million concurrent number of players. That's huge. And some shooter games like Crossfire also have done very well. So for CSGO, which have been very successful in the West, we expect this game will also be a blockbuster in Chinese market when it's launched officially. So I think esports and mobile games are pretty popular among Chinese players. For the mobile market, the really successful games are from Supercell, Casual Connect, that's kind of very high quality games. But for other games, they have very limited success. So as a rule of thumb, you want to succeed in China, you need to have really deep content. Make sure people can, Chinese players consume content very fast. Back to the MMO age, Chinese players can consume content much faster than Western players. So you have a really deep content and not real replayability for player to play. And also you design your monetization very well. As you know, in China, players are willing to pay if the game is well designed. So for our top players, they spend a couple of $1 million in our games. So, but 90% people don't pay anything.
Yeah.
So make sure you have well-designed monetization loop. Make sure you can monetize from the Chinese market.
Yeah.
So I think, certainly it's an alluring target to say, all right, we'd like to develop a game that's going to appeal to both the West and China. Initially, right out of the gate, it's going to do well in both markets. And the reality is that almost never happens. So the few examples that we've talked about at this panel, League of Legends, Supercell, all those games became successful in their native markets first. So at the end of the day, for any developer focused on building a new game, even if you're an experienced developer, I think that the key thing is to focus on the markets that you understand and achieve success there first, because then that's what ultimately going to allow you to find a partner over in China who's interested in signing a compelling deal with you and bringing the game over there. Rather than trying to waste your resources and thinking about how can I adapt my game out of the gate to make it apply and be successful over in China.
Yeah, that answers a few questions that I had at last session. So the monetization nuances are different. Definitely the consumption of content is much quicker. And you have to be prepared to build that content extremely quickly and maintain the quality of the product while maintaining obviously the monetization methods that are working in China. Okay, and they could be very different from those that exist in North America or Europe in terms of monetization, or are they similar?
I can give you a good example. We acquired a studio called Creep Studios in the Bay Area about 4 or 5 years ago. So that's what, US developers, they design most, and they have very limited success. So the company was unprofitable. That reason we bought the company, and we saw potential. So we have our designer work with them to redesign monetization loop. So we're able to increase revenue by 3 or 4 times after our involvement. So let's see the difference.
In the West?
In the West, yes.
Wow.
So that's a big difference. So I think Chinese designers understand how to monetize user base better than Western designers.
Yeah.
But Western designers are very good at designing really fun, engaging content.
Yeah, that's an impressive story. So the monetization, having been in many game studios in China, I can appreciate the amazing ability to take a game and monetize great content, but monetize it properly, even in another market.
Yeah, that's the reason we see a lot of synergy between East and Western developers.
Yeah.
That's the reason we want to go overseas. We started a US operation back to 2008 after our IPO and NASDAQ. So we have invested acquired 9 companies in North America so far. And that's not enough. We're looking for more companies to work with in Europe, US, or Middle East as well.
Okay, great. All right, I'm going to change topics here for a minute. So some game company CEOs are concerned about how the company culture may change after an acquisition. It's always a question that comes up to me in any acquisition or potential acquisition. Will my company be torn apart? Will the culture change? Will there be uninvited developers from China and coming in and into my studio and taking over? How have you seen that played out? I can add my experience as well, but how have you seen that play out?
Actually, just as our company's example is that we acquired not only global company but also local studios. So it's not a question to the Western company only, it's also to the local companies. After acquisition, everybody would be concerned. It's very natural. Would the 2 companies be working together very smoothly? But our example is that we acquired this studio in Beijing, and they are a very pure developer, the development studio. And the team we maintain them as a standalone, independent decision-making development studio. And we are providing them the strategic resource like marketing and publishing, what we are good at, to them, to help them to publish their game to more markets, not only in China, but also to global market. So the game is released, they released their first mobile game this June, which is actually the only mobile game which is featured by Tim Cook in WWDC in San Francisco, which is very impressive for them. And the studio is still working very, to design their game, doing the game they love to develop by themselves. So this is just to give you a real example that how we would treat the company acquired by us. We see them not as a subsidiary. We see them as a strategic partner that combined with us, share in the umbrella our strategic resource. Rather than, we want them to do something, they need to, understand what we want to do, something like that. So this is an example. And another example is BigPoint. This is actually, the real example between Western company and Chinese company. So as Bill just mentioned, I think he's making a point really correct, is that Western developer, Western studio is good at creative stuff. But Chinese company is good at monetization because that's what we do to make our living. What we are doing with BigPoint is that we have BigPoint's producer just do the creative stuff, and they are really good at graphic design. And we send out our producer, which is better in monetization, to help them to co-develop the game together with them to make the game previous as a PvE storytelling style of game into more like combined with PvP, add more in-game purchase and monetization. So that's what we are also trying to do, is just trying to combine our advantage together.
Yeah.
This is what we are doing to, you know, to treat with the culture difference. And another old saying is that if one bottle of wine cannot solve the problem, two bottles.
Good one. I definitely have seen a difference in cooperation between Chinese and Western companies, and that, or between Chinese companies and other Chinese companies, and that both companies want to win, and there's respect for each other in terms of their strengths. And having lived through the 90s and 2000s and the age of these monstrous monstrous publishers like EA and Activision and others that bought studios and then took over and changed a lot of things, I find this incredibly refreshing and a much better recipe for success in the game industry. Bill, you have comments on that too?
Sure. Actually, we know what we don't know. It's very hard for a Chinese company to manage a studio, overseas. So the best approach is to let them to be hands off, leave them alone.
Yeah.
So that's the approach we have been taking so far. So we have a strong track record in the West that really differentiates us from other Asian companies. So we have examples like for the first studio we invest called Runic in Seattle. After several years, when two co-founders want to leave, start a new studio, just by 2 of them, they still want to work with Profile World. So they still took our money as we are their only investor in a new startup. So we want to have a long-term partnership with the developers because they're the most important asset in the industry.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what you've seen, Jim?
Yeah, so I say here again, it's helpful to understand the rationale behind some of these deals, right? So because many of these public companies in China have made commitments publicly to their investors and to the public markets as to what profit targets they're going to be hitting over the next 2 or 3 years, when they sign these deals and they make these acquisitions, a lot of times they'll have the sellers commit to a certain guarantee of profits over the next couple of years also. And so their earnouts will be tied to these profits, right? So therefore, it's in their best interest to allow the team to work on their games and continue generating the revenue and the profit that they have done so, which has made them an attractive target in the first place, right? So it completely explains why they would prefer to be hands-off. Except the one area where they do help out is actually if the games are relevant to the China market. That's an area where they can lend their expertise, their distribution, publishing capabilities, and that's actually where, for many of the Western sellers, they're interested in getting the China buyers involved post-deal.
So it's definitely a win-win proposition. Everybody's looking to win from this, and as a result, everybody's cooperating and respecting each other. Before you make the final acquisition of these companies, have you discussed that integration plan with the company that you're acquiring? Have you talked about what the roles of each company is going to be and how you're going to work together? Is that discussed prior to the completion of the deal?
Well, as Jim said, right now for many acquisition deals we are doing right now in the West, that's a multi-year performance-based valuation. So at least we'll run the team to run the business for at least 2 or 3 years without any involvement from Profile World, so that they can maximize potential of the company and make the earnout eventually. But
you make that clear ahead of time. Mm-hmm. You make that clear, yeah.
Yeah.
The key message is that you're making sure that plan is in place ahead of completing the deal, mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But also we have done deals in the past, like we bought a company, we make sure that's a clear integration plan before the acquisition happens. So after the deal is closed, we are able to integrate the team with our operation as well.
Yeah, good. So planning ahead is very important. Okay, good. So we talked a little bit about the game regulations. So what are the consequences of the Chinese game regulations by the Chinese government on Chinese developers and Western developers? We've seen the need for approval of all mobile games Even existing mobile games need to be approved by the Chinese government. What sort of implications does that have? A delay? Is it going to hurt certain developers? Is it a good thing?
Well, in the West, the market is an invisible hand. So you just focus on making great games, and you can, make money. But in China, the government has really heavy hand, and that hand is everywhere.
Yeah.
So back to the PC age. So government have regulation to protect players. They have anti-addiction system there. So you cannot play game for over how many hours. And if you play over a certain amount of time a day, your XP will be reduced. And also, there are also some limitation on the graphics. You cannot show skeleton, you cannot show bones, you cannot show blood in your games. So the government really done a lot of things. And as you mentioned, for mobile game today, that's the official government process now. You need to wait for maybe a couple months before your game can be approved and put on the App Store.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's quite different.
Okay. So a couple of months. Perspective, Jim?
Yes, I think the impact definitely does change. I think the ability of smaller studios within China to compete in China's marketplace, as well as Western companies that want to release their titles in China, right? So before, where all you had to go through was Apple's approval process, there was no government process. Any team with a solid product, they just released it, and if it's a good product, it could compete. But now that all these games need to go through content approvals, naturally there's going to be some preferences for larger companies based on relationships or whatever. And so for smaller companies, it may take longer for their games to get approved. For Western companies, it may take longer for their games to be approved. So I think that does just push the opportunity and the upside more towards the large companies that really have these relationships. And for a Western company, it makes it all that more critical to find a Chinese publisher to get into the market.
Yeah, no question. For many reasons. Yeah. Any perspective, Yuli, or agree?
Actually, the rules is always there. It's never changed. So for the games you want to launch in China market, like a couple of years ago, you need to go through this licensing approval process, the same approval process. It's just starting from this year, the March, the government put a stricter process on mobile games. But that doesn't mean that previously there is no such rules and process. Actually, it's also not the easy process for the government to go put everything under the process. So they've been trying to push back a little bit on the the deadline. So for the actually it's very right. Before for the global company, especially the indies. Indie studio, they can launch a game in App Store by themselves. But now, actually, they need to be cautious to find a local publisher partner, at least to get the licensing done in China market.
I see. Okay. Yeah, that's good. Okay. Just a little bit on the public markets, and Bill talked about this. Your company was public on the NASDAQ, and the multiples that you earned on there, 10 times P versus 50 times. So and I think Youzu's public as well in China. So, pardon? Yeah. So, can you give us some perspective on being public is there any more perspective on being public in Asia versus being public in North America or Europe, other than multiples? Is there higher regulation? Is there same regulations and reporting and approvals?
I think first, as we have experience between the U.S. equity market and Chinese equity market, the Chinese equity market is really highly regulated. There's a lot of restrictions, like for example, in the West, you can just announce a deal after the deal is signed. But in China, if the valuation is about certain limitation, we have to disclose deal after we sign a non-binding term sheet. that can make your life very miserable because you have non-binding term sheet, then you need to disclose the deal to the public. So we have to find other ways to mitigate that risk.
Yeah.
And also that other thing like, if you work on a deal, you need to put your stock on hold. The trading will be on hold for maybe months.
Oh.
So that's that's quite different. I don't know which bad or good. I would say quite different from NASDAQ.
Yeah.
But the good thing is that with the public listing in Chinese market, we're able to do a much bigger deal than we could in the past. So today we're looking into a deal at hundreds of million dollars or even $1 billion, the things we cannot do in the past.
Yeah.
So that's pros and cons.
Yeah. That's amazing. So you have to announce the deal before you have a definitive agreement in place.
Yeah, just with a non-binding term sheet.
Yeah.
We had to announce the deal.
It's amazing. Yeah, I've been through that a few times, and it's kind of scary for everybody. Is that a result of the markets being somewhat unregulated, let's say 10 years ago, or there's a problem with regulation or a problem with companies going public in China before this, and there was no regulation or little regulation? Was there a problem before that they're trying to solve?
Actually, for us, because our company is listed in China, Asia market, so we haven't. We are lucky enough to we go directly to China Asia market, so we don't need to come back from U.S. market and then to list in China Asia market. So Chinese regulation part is not our concern. However, the benefit that listed in China Asia market is very obviously we enjoy a better multiple in China market, and also a key reason behind that is that the investors in China know us better. Mm-hmm. I think this is the most important thing because when we try to make some really strategic move, I think Chinese investor will be the first to market and they can understand us better. And for going forward, also we see that many Chinese internet companies, especially those largest ones like 360, they also all come back to China market, and we see that Chinese Asia market try to closing the door for the arbitrage between Western market and China market. So that's what I say, that we are lucky enough to make this to the China Asia market directly rather than coming back from US to China, because I've been go through the the process. I was working for 360. I've been through the whole process. I know how difficult to make a US listed company back to China market. That is really difficult, and not to mention there is a relisting behind it. It's going to take longer time.
Yeah, we were in the middle of it's very interesting. We were in the middle of a deal last summer, and the Chinese markets were going up and down like crazy. And I think, and there was a lot of panic among the Western companies, Western investors, and that sort of thing. What's going to happen? Is this a market going to completely collapse? And I think it seemed to be more of a cleaning out of some of the less legitimate companies. And as a result of this regulation, it's stabilized the markets for now and in the future. Do you agree?
I think Chinese market is better today than in the past. In the past, when before last summer's crash, some company got treated at a really ridiculous P ratio, like over 1,000 times P ratio. That's one company make like a Google Cardboard type of VR device. They sell this concept. They say, tell investor, oh, see, we have this VR device now. We sell 99 yuan, which is about $16. So then the stock price went up so much. That's become over 1,000 times P ratio. So that's not sustainable.
Yeah.
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 So I think now should be a better time.
That's good. No, that's good. That was a terrifying time. Okay, we're getting pretty close to the end. I want to ask each of you about platform predictions for China, whether it be mobile, PC, console, VR. What the main markets now are PC and mobile. Where do you see the platforms going in the future? Any domination or changes in that in that leadership in the market? Jim?
So I think the two areas that'll be interesting to keep an eye on are console and VR. So certainly on the VR front, a lot of technology is being developed in the US, but from China, there's a lot of interest and a lot of investment, whether it's in hardware, some content development in the VR space. So I think it'll be interesting to see, some of the innovations that come out of China on the VR side, and specific to console also. Console has never been big in China because they were banned there for a while, even though they're legal now. At this point, so much of the audience base has grown up playing on PC and mobile that it's questionable whether console is really going to pick up there, even though it is allowed now. But in terms of the intersection of the two, certainly in the U.S. PlayStation VR, it is an easier to pick up experience than some of the PC-based platforms. So I think it'll be interesting to see whether some of the content that's being developed there actually manages to help drive some of the console adoption in China, because some of that content is games that you're not able to play on the PC.
Yeah. Bill?
For Profile World, in China, we generate over 50% revenue from mobile and rest from PC. We are the first console game publisher in China, but as Jim said, the console market is still small compared to PC and mobile. We are cautious about VR. Definitely, it's interesting. It's good for industry to have another screen besides TV for console, mobile, tablet, and the PC. But this market is so new. It's so in early stage. We don't see any financial upside by investing in VR games at this stage. And also, VR have a deep issue about social issue. It's kind of isolated experience. When put the VR headset on, you cannot communicate with other people in the room. So it's kind of antisocial, and this kind of isolating experience actually may limit how big the market will be for VR. Mm-hmm. So that's about China market. In the West, we generate over, I think, 60% revenue from console today, and rest from PC. Console pretty interesting market. We had some big success in a console platform, so we'll push hard on PC and console platform going forward.
Okay, great. Yuli?
I think in this question, I have a different mind with Bill. Actually, our company started the business from PC. We are one of the top number one, actually, web game developer in China market. Mm-hmm. However, that's after 5 years, we clearly see that web game market is going to decrease now, not only in China, but also in global markets. And PC actually start before that. It's going, the growth rate has been really, really, narrow now. So 4 years ago, we see the booming of mobile game market. And right now, we also see the growth rate of the mobile game business is quite flat, and the market has been so warm. Competition has been so fierce. So we see in global market, especially in Nordic, there are more and more indie studios trying to make VR games, which remind me actually 4 years ago, the mobile business, mobile game industry 4 years ago, or even PC game business 10 years ago. We've been actually, Youzu has been one of the most active company after VR content, not only on VR game, but also on VR video or movie, because we not only make game, we are also one of the entertainment company in China. We make movie. Mm-hmm. So we think if we definitely going forward, we see a new trend, a new form of game or entertainment. No matter it's VR or AR, there's going to be a new trend, new technology, replace what we see on mobile. And I'm not saying that mobile and PC is going to be small. I'm saying that there is going to be a new form of entertainment that take a significant part of players. And about console, I have to admit that because in China we see no habits of player to play the game in living room. Chinese player, they see game as a more private entertainment. They like to play on PC, they like to play on mobile because that's actually what they play in their private room. It's not like the Western, they have habits to play together, family play together, friend play together in the living room. Chinese player doesn't have this habit. So we don't see a big market in console, not only because console was limited to enter China market, the hardware, but also the habit is not there. So I think China market is due to skip that phase already. But going forward, I think VR is going to be big. We are just waiting for a killer app, just like we see Angry Birds 5 years ago in mobile. We are waiting for a killer app on VR.
Yeah. It's interesting because I've been in the game business for a while, and I've seen, quote unquote, the death of the PC gaming, the death of mobile gaming, the death of console games, and it doesn't happen. I'm excited to see a new gaming experience coming about, but everybody makes these predictions that have been completely wrong about mobile and PC gaming, and I think that will continue to grow. Plus, you get a new form of entertainment that will find the right app, which is going to be very exciting.
Well, from all the talks I've heard today, the market in China feels so risky, especially for outsiders with the regulations and the high competitions. It feels that unless you have a well-funded business outside China, it's not worth the risk. I mean, is good IP enough for entering the China's market, or do you have to have a working, successful game in order to even try to enter this market?
Well, for the IP, there's some big IP launched in China. For example, Corum launched Marvel Contest Champions in China, but not really successful. I think Chinese players have very different, preference over from the Western players. So IP is important, but not the most important factor. The game quality, that's really make a difference.
How about well-funded companies that want to keep their current business in the West and start a new adventure, a new project with the Chinese market, maybe with something that is inherently built for a broader, for a more global audience?
Yeah, you heard my take on this. I'm not bullish on this. Right? So there's tons of companies in China that are developing content for China. To think that a Western company can, allocate the resources and try to build something specific for China, the probabilities are low. And again, I think you want to look at it also from a game that I want to distribute and publish within China, or I have a company that I want to find a China buyer for, because it is different things that you should be looking for. If you're looking ultimately thinking about, all right, it seems like there's an opportunity to sell the company to China. Many of these companies, they're not interested in other companies that are already doing well in China, right? They're interested in these targets because they're profitable and they have a footprint outside of China that they want to get access to, right? So really, if you're a Western company, I'd say focus on Western markets that you understand, focus on genres that you understand, audience bases that you understand, and ultimately, if you're able to achieve success there, if one of your goals is, or you want to consider selling to a China buyer, that option will be there. But let's say you focus your business or you allocate a significant amount of resources towards figuring out content that'll work in China, the probabilities of that are low. And even if you do succeed to some degree, that's not what's going to get the interest of a China buyer.
The question is about game mechanics, right? About Western game mechanics that tend to increase monetization in the West. How easy are they translated to the regulations, to the limitations of Chinese markets? You spoke about a transition of culture during an acquisition by any Chinese company. I think the question is about how the game, how the game themselves change on such a transition from a Western market to Chinese?
Yeah,
For example,
does that mechanic work in China?
in Candy Crush, you have 5 lives and time needed to restore that life. Is it okay for Asian market? Do people, Asian people, like to wait, or they want to play continuously with no waiting time?
Actually, in China, the games, we also have energy consumption design. That's already been done in China, Chinese games. And we also have the mechanics that the user, you can wait until the system give you some energy, then you can replay the game, or you can actually purchase the energy. So this is a mechanics already been done by Chinese game developer. And the session mechanics, like open the session by, like unlock the session, something like that, is very seldomly made by China. But for the overseas games, for Western games, import to China market, we also have some publisher try that. That's also work.
You folks haven't commented on different type of games by genre that might be popular in China or versus not compared to the West. So that's one question. The other one is on monetization, where free-to-play is so popular in China. What about ad-supported ones? Is there much discrimination between the two? So your comments on both of those ways of segmenting companies would be appreciated.
Maybe let me start. Because I was working for one of the largest Android market in China. And we see the trends that in China market, there are some dominant genre, but that's actually changing time by time. That's not saying that one genre is going to dominate the market for a long time. So we see currently still the MMORPG, ARPG, and like card game is still one of the 3 of the largest genre in China market. But we are also seeing growing trend in like SLG. So for example, for COK, it's actually the similar gameplay following Game of War. And that game was actually successful in Western market first. It's developed by a Chinese developer, but it's successful in Western market first, and then import to China and other Asian markets also working. So we see growing trend in strategy game. We also see some very unique gameplay, like two-dimension universe is quite Japanese style of game, is also very successful in China. And casual game is, for a long time, is very large in terms of download and volume in China market. And talking about monetization, because due to its key billing is from SMS billing, the carrier billing is the most important part for in-game purchase for casual game. So due to the unstable carrier billing in the past 1 year, the revenue of casual game is quite impact. About 30% of the revenue of casual game is impacted in the market. But still, casual game is a very big market in China market. About like 40% of the download in the market is casual game. And talking about your second question, the in-game purchase versus free-to-play, the answer is yes, free-to-play is no doubt the only way to win in China market, although there are also some very unique small market. They are trying to bring pay-per-download game to China market. But I think it's not only the trend in China market, but globally. Free-to-play is the global trend. And advertisement is, for those games, pay-per-download game, advertisement is no doubt one of the very good way to monetize the game. And a good thing is that starting from this year, the Android channel in China, they started to open the advertisement. Previously, they don't have this. So it's going to be an opportunity for casual game developer.
Yeah. From the acquisition side, do you as an acquirer care what the genre is of a Western game or its monetization method?
So, let me clarify if I understand. So you're saying from a Chinese acquirer, are they more biased towards developers whose games are monetized through IP or through advertising? Right. So I think I could jump in here for for the companies that are looking to acquire companies overseas, if the overseas markets are monetizing through ads, they're going to be interested in those companies that are profitable, right? So, you take someone like, I don't know, a Rovio or an Outfit 7, the majority of their revenue is coming from ads. Certainly, they're going to generate as much interest, if they were interested, as someone whose games were primarily IAP driven.
Yeah, thank you. These guys are the foremost experts on the Chinese market, and we want to thank Yuli, Bill, and Jim for joining us today, and thank you for sharing all of the information with us. So we appreciate it. Thank you.